Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Cheltenham Borough Council Planning Committee, being held on Thursday, the 18th of December 2025. My name is Councillor Garth Barnes, and I'm the chair of the committee. This meeting is being streamed live to the Cheltenham Borough Council's YouTube channel, and the recording of the meeting will be held for 4 years. If there are any breaks in transmission to the YouTube stream, the meeting will be adjourned for a short period until any issues are resolved. If you are here to make a representation to the meeting, you are consenting to the use of the sound and video recordings for broadcasting and training purposes. Please be aware that CCTV and audio recording is now in operation in the public gallery, and the recordings will be held by the Council for 5 months. Also, please note, excuse me, a fire alarm test is not expected, so if the alarm does sound, you should immediately make your way to the nearest exit. I will go through the agenda in a minute, but we are going to change the order of the applications tonight, so I'll come to that later. We've received apologies from Councillor Clark, and Councillor Chellin is acting as a substitute. Unfortunately, I think she's caught on train journey somewhere, so she may be a little bit delayed. It will continue at the moment without her. Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, on 6B Printbox Works, my family have own a shop in Tivoli Street, so I'll be declaring an interest and not taking part in the debate.
Thank you for that. Declarations of independent site visits, item 3. Are there any? No? Right. Item 4, the minutes of the last meeting, held on the 20th of November. I think I have a copy of them here. Would you be happy for me to sign them off as a true record? No objections? Thank you. Thank you. Item 5, public questions. We don't have any this time. So we now move on to the agenda proper, and I am going to take the tree item, which is 6C, first on the agenda, and then we'll go back to the agenda as detailed. So let me just get my paper for that. So item 6C, which is a tree preservation order at the rear of Mitford Lodge, and I'd like the officer to introduce the case for us, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for rearranging the order for us. So I have for you a tree preservation order on a large holm oak to the rear of Mitford Lodge on Tivoli Road. The owner of the tree has submitted an objection to the provisional TPO, and so procedurally we bring it to committee to decide whether or not to confirm the TPO. So the tree is to the rear of the property. It's a large tree that can be seen from the road, although of course the view of the tree is obscured by the building itself. It can still be seen, and the size of the tree is such that and the age of the tree is such that it's a significant tree in its location and in the wider street scene. So this is a view of the tree from roughly the northwest 2 years ago, prior to some pruning works that were undertaken. This is a view of the tree this year from nearly the same spot, but not quite the same spot. So the tree had been reduced at this point following a Conservation Area Tree Works notice back in 2023. Those works have reduced it mainly from the laterals, so not really touching the height of the tree, but reducing the laterals, meaning that it no longer overhangs the neighbours' gardens to the same extent, and more light is able to, I suppose, percolate underneath the tree. But it has encouraged some epicormic growth around the base of the tree, that is reactive growth up the stems of the tree. It's a multi-stem tree, which you can probably see from the previous photo more clearly, actually. It splits or bifurcates at sort of waist or shoulder height. So why did we make a TPO in the first place? We received a tree works proposal under the conservation area earlier this year to remove all but one stem of the tree. Now, both tree officers considered that that wouldn't be appropriate for the following reasons. It wouldn't be keeping in keeping with the British Standards 3998, which is recommendations for tree works, which we sort of value as a touchstone for guidance on what is and isn't appropriate tree work. It would represent enormous loss of visual immunity to an important tree. It would be a large loss of the tree's capacity for sustaining itself through photosynthesis. And that would weaken its own life-supporting processes. And it would leave very large wound sites, multiple wound sites at the base of the tree, which would become potential pathways for ingress of damaging fungus or bacteria. And that, potentially could lead to the shortening of the tree's lifespan. On top of this, mature trees, generally speaking, are much less able to cope with heavy pruning. Now, it's a tree of high value. It's one of the older holm oaks in the borough. It currently has good form. It's generally speaking been managed well. It appears in good condition, has hopefully a long life expectancy ahead of it. And it is visible from the road despite being in the back garden. It's a heritage asset to the property, if not the neighbourhood. Now, despite communicating to the agent who was acting on behalf of the applicant that if they persisted in pursuing the works back, that the applicant had suggested we would be forced to serve a TPO, the applicant decided to pursue the works back. Now, a TPO is the only real way that the local authority can stop a conservation area tree works notice. We can't refuse a conservation area tree works notice. We have to serve a TPO in order to stop inappropriate tree works in a conservation area. Local policy, GI2, says that for protected trees, the council will require pruning where it's necessary to be undertaken so as to minimise harm to the health or general appearance of a tree and to be in conformity with BS 3998, which I referred to earlier. So when we served the TPO, we put up site notices on Tivoli Road. Copies of the TPO were sent to the owner, immediate neighbours and ward councillors. The owner objected to the TPO on the grounds that since the TPO was served, they decided to withdraw their works proposal, the Con Area notice, and had a new work specification prepared with a different contractor. And that reasoning was echoed by a neighbour at Cumberland Lawn. The neighbour at Penhouse replied, which is another neighbour, replied to highlight the size and dominating nature of the tree, how the tree blocks light, and is a safety concern with the limbs overhanging their garden. Their reply went on to support the proposal, the conservation area tree works notice, saying that it wouldn't harm the tree and would make it safer and improve its amenity value. So to address the objections, as I said, a TPO is the only legal tool that we would have to stop inappropriate tree works in or outside of a conservation area. And once a TPO has been served, applications for works can thereafter be refused if we consider that they're inappropriate in order to protect the amenity value of trees. The applicant indicates that their approach to the tree has changed, and this is welcomed by the tree section. However, it was only when a TPO was served that their approach changed. And to confirm the provisional TPO would mean, to not confirm the provisional TPO would mean relinquishing a level of control over the tree when the TPO is no longer enforceable. The TPO affords legal protection and emphasises the council's position that the tree is high value and should be treated with due consideration. It's likely that the tree predates Mitford Lodge, which is built at the turn of the century, the millennium, by many decades, if not centuries. It's also important for wildlife. When we were there in 2023, we did see 2 short-eared owls in the canopy of the tree, which, is fairly important, I'd say, in an urban area. Okay, so in short, the officer recommendation is to confirm the TPO. The TPO is justified. It's a really high value tree. It's a really good tree. From inspecting it, we'd say that it, has a long, safe, useful life expectancy, appears to be in good condition and has good form, and a threat to the tree has been established in appropriate pruning works. Now, despite recommendations from the tree officer to change the work spec in the initial conservation area notice to more minor works and advice from their own arborist, the applicant pursued their own work specification. As I've said, a TPO is the only way that we can resist work proposals in a conservation area. And the TPO was the only reason the applicant changed their approach to the tree. It has moderate to good public visibility in its current form. It's significant in terms of its heritage and wildlife value. Really, to lose the TPO would mean relinquishing control, the control that we have now. And it would mean putting us back in a scenario where we would potentially have to serve a new TPO further down the line if future inappropriate work specifications were submitted to us. Local and national policy supports the retention of this high-value tree and the control of its management. Okay, I think that's everything. That is everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. We have one public speaker, an objector, who's in the gallery, I think. Do you have a microphone? You have 5 minutes in which to speak, and I will remind you 30 seconds towards the end of your speech that you're coming to the end. So please start whenever you want.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the officer for explaining the situation with the tree. The premise of our appeal is really around the view that we had taken the decision and have recognised the procedures in place without the need for a TPO. And I'll explain some of the background to that around the words that the officer has just given. So to go on to my formal statement, we're appealing against a proposal to convert the TPO on the home oak at Mitford Lodge, Tivoli Road, from temporary to permanent status. We were misguided by our previous advisors. We now understand the process. The tree can be satisfactorily maintained under the arrangements in place for managing trees within the conservation area without the need for a TPO. The trigger for the temporary TPO came about because, as lay people, we didn't fully understand the process for the application to undertake remedial work. The advice we were given at the time was that the application would lead to a conversation and agreement on the detail of the work, to our understanding. We do not recall point 4.5 in the officer's comments, whereby they state we were advised against the proposal by our original consultants. We also refer to point 6.1, conclusions and recommendation that, quote, despite attempts by the tree officer to negotiate a more moderate approach to the tree, the applicant was unwilling to change their proposal until a TPO was served, unquote. These were made directly to our previous advisors, and we have no knowledge of these attempts. That's through no fault of the officers, but our selection of advisors at the time. We now understand that the original application was a statement of intent, and this can only be declined by the council by the introduction of a TPO. We have since engaged with a new professional consultant who explained the exact process to us. This has already led to an approved programme of work for the tree, which has recently been successfully completed. To recap, we look forward to working with these professionals, along with the council, to maintain the home oak. So in our opinion, there is no need for the TPO to be made permanent. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much indeed. Well within your time limit. So thank you. It's now open to members to ask officers questions. Councillor.
Thanks, Chair. So if we were to agree this TPO and the resident in question wanted to carry out reasonable maintenance work on the tree, they can approach you, and providing it's acceptable, it would be okay.
Correct.
Councillor Wheeler.
Yes, my question is almost on the same lines. As I understand, epicormic growth was removed from the base of the tree recently. Woodworks of that nature, like simply removing epicormic, could they do that without coming back to you, or is that something they'd be allowed to do anyway?
Okay, officially and technically and by the letter of the law, all works really should be submitted to the local authority and approved prior to works commencing. And I suppose from a procedural point of view, there's very little difference from the customer's end in terms of the process of applying, or the process in terms of a TPO, or the process of submitting a tree works notice. The outcome is slightly different, as described, but they would still have to submit something to the council in either case. Would we be minded to, worst case scenario, prosecute someone for removing epicormic growth without prior notice to the council? It would be unlikely, because it would be unlikely to be in the public interest to do so. But technically, yes, they should. It doesn't take a huge amount of time and energy, and contractors are welcome to do that on their behalf. There's no fee from our end. So it's a small administrative obligation. So I suppose unofficially, they probably could get away with removing epicormic growth without too much bother if they didn't ask first. But officially they should, really, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other member question? In that case, any debate on the issue? Councillor Wheeler.
Yes, I think we've been here with other trees a number of times, certainly since I've been on planning. And my feeling is that there should be no, if the applicant has got a plan that officers have approved for works, I can't see any hindrance in having a TPO. The only reason you would not want the TPO is so that you can do works that would otherwise require it. So I can't see any good reason not to put the TPO on. So I'll be voting for the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Steinhardt?
Thank you, Chair. As far as I understand it, this is a heritage tree. It's an important tree in Cheltenham. It's probably 150 to 200 years old, and as you say, predates any other building. Possibly it was the middle of some huge estate somewhere. And if you excuse the pun, getting to the root of the problem, as you say, is the only legal way of actually protecting such an important tree. So I will be supporting a TPO. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Foster?
I agree with Councillor Wheeler, and I think that TPOs on lovely mature trees, it's a custodial process. And I get the impression there's been a lot of misunderstanding and a bit of ill feeling possibly here, but I think we should move beyond that and see that a TPO is something just to protect a tree. And personally, I think we should have more TPOs on the mature trees in Cheltenham because they're such an important part of our landscape. So I will be voting that way as well.
Thank you. Councillor Bamford?
Just to reflect the fact that I was truly stunned when we went into the garden to have a look at this tree. I was astonished that there was such a magnificent specimen locally, places that I'd often walked or run past. It's a specimen that wouldn't be out of place in Kew Gardens or Westonbirt. It really is a fantastic tree. And obviously, whilst I'm sure the current house owners bear it no ill will, I think we should do all we can to ensure that it's protected as far as possible into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chelin, I'm afraid as you came in late to the discussion, I can't allow you to take part in this particular vote. Sorry about that. Any other member? Councillor Dobie?
Just building on what Councillor Bamford has said, I was very impressed when I went to see the tree, just how clear it was to see, not only from the road, but also from many other properties. Properties in other roads can see this tree. It's like in a bowl in the middle of 4 or 5 streets. So it's very much part of the local landscape. Even if people weren't objecting or in support, they will have admired this tree for many years. It looks to me as though it's been there since a time when there was a larger house somewhere there, and that was confirmed by the fact that there are also sequoias there that I know are very old trees, and the size of the sequoia suggested to me that this arboretum of a larger house was there for maybe 200 years. And so that there's a landscape that can be seen through this tree and through the other trees along Tivoli Road that tells you something about the heritage of the whole area of Cheltenham. Cheltenham, which I know it's quoted many times, but I'll quote it again, is a town within a park. And this is a tree which is part of an older park that would have been there before, obviously long before the current house was there, but also before most of the houses, if not all of the houses, were there. And it tells us something about the heritage of our whole town. It deserves a protection order on it.
Thank you. Any other member? I think I'll go to the vote then in that case. I don't think there's anything for the officer to sum up, unless you want to, Sam.
No, I have nothing.
No. Okay. So we'll take the vote. Would you all please vote either for, against, or abstain? I think that's everybody, and it's a unanimous vote for the protection established for the TPO without any changes. Thank you very much indeed. We now move back to the agenda item 6B, which is the print box works. And I'll just wait for the officers to come to the table to sort their introduction out. I'm jumping the gun, am I? Sorry, beg your pardon. Beg your pardon. Yes, thank you very much indeed for that. We're doing 6A, Pittville School. Sorry to confuse everybody. It is Christmas. So I'll ask the Senior Planning Officer to introduce the case for us, please, when she's ready.
Thank you, Chair. This is a full application for the erection of 58 residential dwellings at Pittville School on land that was a former playing field of the school. The proposals include access, parking, landscape and associated works. The application is before Planning Committee today due to a Presby Parish Council objection. I'm sure that members are fairly familiar with the site. So it's the former playing field to the north of the main school buildings. It's largely surrounded by residential properties, the Starvall Farm development to the east, Greenfields to the north, and New Barn Lane, and the Pittville Student Village to the west. And the access to the site would be via Broadacre Road off New Barn Lane, which is that little line that comes off on the right-hand side. The site is also partly in the conservation area, so the strip of land to the south, where the tree belt is in the conservation area, but the bulk of the site is outside it. This is an aerial view, just to get a bit more context for the site. And as you can see, that the newer houses of Starvall Farm to the east. The site layout drawing, it's a fairly sort of typical estate road layout with a circular road, estate road, linear form of development, and with open space and a Suds Pond feature to the south of the site. And there are two footpath links, one joining the site to Cape Bridge Road in the south-east, and another footpath link that runs on the southern part of the site that joins on to Albert Road. The houses are a mix of 2-storey, 2.5 and 3-storey, and they range from 1 to 4-bed houses. And there is an affordable housing provision as well, the 40%, so that's 23 affordable units. This is a more colourful version, just to give you a little bit more perspective on how the layout would appear. You can see there the 2 footpath links at the bottom of the site and the Suds feature. And this is the building heights layout. So the purple houses are the 3-storey units, and one of those is an apartment building containing flats. And the green are the 2.5-storey units, and the blue are the 2-storey. There are no single-storey units, apart from the garages. So there are no dwellings above 2-storey height that adjoin neighbouring residential houses. And the taller buildings have been kept to the west, near the student village, because obviously those student blocks are up to 4 stories in height. And this is the affordable housing layout. So the blue dwellings are the shared ownership units, and the green, the social rented properties. So they're fairly evenly distributed around the site. And this is the soft landscaping scheme. I'll just sort of run you through it briefly. The circles, if you can make them out, are new tree are new trees to be planted. So there's a lot being planted on the southern section where there's an existing tree belt. The majority of the rear gardens will have a new tree, a fruit tree. There are street trees and other planting. The green shaded areas is new shrub planting. The darker yellow area is wildflower meadow planting, and the green strips across the site is new hedging. And obviously there's a suds feature as well. So it's fairly generous in terms of its soft landscaping. And this is the external materials plan. There is a varied mix. Buff brick are the yellow shaded units, and the orange will be red brick or red-orange brick. And some of them have a little bit of black brick insert. And obviously materials would be, the actual material specification will be determined at a later stage, but that's the general materials palette across the site. So these are some of the street scene elevations to give you an idea of how the site will be built out. So you can see that varied materials palette and the mix in house types across the site. And I won't show images of every single house type, but just one or two just to give you a flavour of the scheme. That's a typical detached house with the buff brick and the black brick insert. Another one. These are the larger of the houses. A smaller detached house with a gable front. There's quite a few great gable fronted houses on this scheme. You'll note that each house will have solar panels. A 2.5-storey townhouse type. A bit more contemporary in its appearance. And a red brick version of a gable-fronted townhouse. And a smaller 3-bed semi-detached. And a buff brick terraced house type. And the unit on the right is the maisonette property in the top right-hand corner of the site. And this is the apartment building, which is over 3 floors of apartments, 1-bed apartments. So turning to the key planning matters, so the principle of development and associated with that is the planning history of the site and the previous planning consents in 2016 and 21 for 58 dwellings on this site, and the policy background of policy SD10 and the MPPF paragraph 11D, the design scale and layout of the proposals, particularly considering the principles of good urban design, architectural design, the materials palette, and the impact on the amenities of neighbouring land users. Affordable housing, the category, type, size, tenure mix, and their distribution across the site. Access, traffic and highway safety, and any impact on the local road network. Landscaping, both hard and soft, and included with that with boundary treatment, the planting schedule, street tree planting, public open space, and its management and maintenance. Any impact on designated and non-designated heritage assets in the locality, ecology, and consideration of the applicant's ecological survey, any loss of habitat, fauna, flora, and biodiversity net gain, and drainage and flood risk. So discussing some of those briefly, officers have no objection to the principle of the development. The proposals are policy compliant and members will recall the site's planning history and the 2016 outline permission and the 2021 reserve matters approval for 58 dwellings. The scheme before you today is broadly similar to the previous approval in terms of its layout and affordable housing provision. However, a new house builder, Newland Homes, has brought forward a different set of house types and architectural approach, although they are not too dissimilar to the previous scheme. During the course of this application, officers have sought a number of revisions, and overall, the design scale and layout of the scheme are now considered acceptable. The Council's urban designer has worked closely with officers and the applicant to secure meaningful and positive enhancements to both the estate layout and the architectural detailing of certain house types. For example, the revised circular estate road and an additional footpath link onto Cakebridge Road improve the permeability and legibility of the development. The revised softer and more varied materials palette and adjustment to the orientation of some of the buildings respond better to the site's open spaces and the character of surrounding development. The applicant has engaged positively throughout this process, and the revised scheme results in a higher quality development than originally submitted. The proposals will deliver a policy-compliant 23 affordable dwellings with a shared ownership and social rent mix, and the Council's Housing Enabling Officer has agreed to the proposed tenure mix, house sizes and categories, and the distribution of affordable units across the site. The proposals also deliver notable biodiversity enhancements, including extensive new tree, hedgerow, shrub and wildflower meadow planting, areas of public open space, and a SUDS attenuation feature in the southern part of the site, as you have seen from the landscaping scheme. Although the mandatory 10% biodiversity net gain for habitat units cannot be met fully on site, the scheme does deliver a 30% gain in hedgerow units, which is a significant uplift. To secure the 10% gain in habitat units, the applicant will make a small off-site purchase of habitat units, and this is considered acceptable. The Council's ecologist is supportive and also recommends the inclusion of various ecological enhancements and appropriate protection measures during the construction phase. In terms of residential amenity for both future occupiers and neighbouring residents, there are no significant amenity concerns. Garden sizes and separation distances within the site and the relationship between the proposed dwellings and neighbouring properties meet acceptable standards. The Higher Authority has raised no objection to the proposals, and the lead local flood authority is similarly satisfied that the revised surface water drainage strategy, which is based on sustainable design principles, is acceptable for this stage in the planning process. The Conservation Officer has assessed the impact on both the conservation area, nearby listed buildings, and the main Pittville School building, which is locally listed. Given the site's location and context, the Conservation Officer concludes that the development would result in no harm to the significance of these heritage assets. In turning to sustainability, this would be a gas-free development. All dwellings would have an air source heat pump, and PV solar panels would be installed on every building. The proposed energy-efficient measures would deliver significant improvements over Part L of building regulations requirements. So in conclusion, whilst the proposals do not conflict with the housing policies of the development plan, members will be aware that these policies are now considered out of date. The Council also does not currently have a 5-year supply of deliverable housing land, and in these circumstances you'll be aware that paragraph 11D of the NPPF and the tilted balance in favour of sustainable development is engaged. Officers have carefully assessed the proposals, including their impact on heritage assets, and there are no strong reasons for refusal on heritage grounds, and no adverse impacts have been identified that would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of the development. And in this case, the delivery of 58 new dwellings, including 23 affordable homes, carries substantial weight in the overall planning balance. The recommendation is therefore to grant planning permission, subject to the conditions set out in the officer report, and the applicant entering into a section 106. I won't run through all the 30+ conditions, but some of the key ones, obviously the facing and roofing materials, because we need to make sure that a high-quality scheme is delivered. Landscape tree and management and maintenance scheme, short-term to 30-year. The biodiversity game plan and habitat management and maintenance plan. The implementation of the footpath links. Implementation of ecological enhancements and ecological protection during construction. An external lighting strategy. Installation of solar PV panels and air source heat pumps, and ensuring a no gas served development. And obscure glazing on selected plots, and permitted development rights removed for additional windows, and permitted development rights removed for extensions as well. And a detailed drainage strategy. That's both foul and surface water. In terms of section 106, heads of terms, these have been agreed with the applicant. So obviously the 40% affordable housing on site provision. Financial contributions are sought towards education at school places and improvements in resources and facilities at Presbyterian Library. Financial contributions towards improvements in play space and recreation facilities at Pitbull Park and local allotment provision. Biodiversity gain monitoring. Management of the proposed on-site public open space and the footpaths. And mitigation for the Beechwood SAC and the residential travel plan monitoring. Just one note, members may have picked up that the site layout was revised recently. It was a minor tweak to improve garden sizes and distances between properties. I've received most of the revised layout drawings, but there are just one or two still outstanding. Because obviously any drawing that shows a layout, whether it's drainage or boundary treatments, also needs to be adjusted in terms of the correct layout so that they all tally. So once those are received, if members are minded to permit this evening, I will just inform Chair and Vice that those drawings are received and acceptable before any decision is issued. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lucy. That's a comprehensive introduction. And I now have one speaker, who is the applicant's representative, Catherine Shepherd. You will have 5 minutes to speak, and I will remind you as you come towards the end of it.
Am I okay to go? Okay. Good evening, Chair and committee members. Thank you for allowing me the time to speak about our application this evening. I am Catherine Shepherd from Newland Homes, and I'm here to talk to you about our proposals for our site adjacent to Pittville School. The site was part of Pittville School's grounds and became redundant for its use as part of the playing field area of the school and was last used in 2009. The site was previously granted planning permission in 2021, but the developer at the time was unable to bring the site forward due to the site requiring the development DFE section 77 approval to dispose of the land to raise capital receipt for a new sports hall. This was subsequently resolved and the site has been purchased by Newland Homes. The funds generated from the sale of the land have provided the school with the ability to construct a much needed new indoor sports hall, which will provide many more sports facilities for the school and the local community. The sports hall is within the school grounds to the south of the site. Our planning application was submitted in May earlier this year, and we have worked with officers to agree a scheme that is aesthetically pleasing and is policy compliant. The scheme will deliver 58 new homes, 40% of which will be affordable, and this is an appropriate density for the site. The site is located towards the northern edge of Cheltenham, which is approximately 1.6 kilometres from the town centre and within reasonable walking distance to local services. A regular bus service is also available. The site is just over 2 hectares and is rectangular in shape with a narrow tree-lined section which extends approximately 150 metres from the site to the west and links with Albert Road. Vehicle access will be taken from Broadacre Road. Gloucestershire County Highways have confirmed this, along with the internal road layout and associated parking is acceptable to the council. Pedestrian access will be provided from Albert Road and Catebridge Road. Our layout provides good separation distances to existing residential dwellings. We will provide ecology and biodiversity enhancements to the site, and existing ecology corridors will be retained. We will provide hedgehog highways as well as bat and bird boxes within our development, along with new and enhanced tree and shrub planting. BNG will be provided partly on-site and partly off-site. This is in line with current BNG legislation. On-site open space is provided along with Section 106 contributions for off-site play provisions and improvements to Pittville Park. Contributions will also be provided for allotments, Cotswold, Beechwoods, SAC, education and libraries. As you will be aware, Newland Homes is a local house builder based in Gloucestershire and was established in 1991. We are a sustainable developer and in 2021 became the first house builder to sign up to the United Nations Climate Neutral Now pledge, demonstrating our commitment to sustainability and striving towards a greener future for all. Our first zero carbon homes were completed in 2022 in the North Somerset village of Tickenham, and our Pear Tree site in Leckhampton was our first zero carbon site in Cheltenham. To date, we have completed 225 zero carbon homes, and this number will continue to rise as all of our current and future developments will provide zero carbon homes. Our homes generate negative amounts of CO2 from the prime energy. Prime energy is energy required for heating, hot water, ventilation and lighting. This is thanks to their use of highly efficient air source heat pumps, extensive solar PV panels providing renewable energy and the high levels of insulation. We have received reports from purchasers that they can run their home on £3.67 per week, and that includes charging an electric car. We also provide water butts to harvest water, composter areas in gardens, integrated eco bins. These are all small initiatives which facilitate a change in consumer behaviour. Infrastructure for car charging points will also be provided. Earlier this year, we received an award in the Best High Volume New Housing Development category at the Building Excellence Awards for our Tickenham site, along with winning the Be Bold Award for our Great Oak site in South Gloucestershire. These awards highlight our outstanding efforts to achieve sustainable homes, as well as high standards of design and construction. We hope that you can see our scheme has been well thought out in terms of design, and with the additional sustainability provisions for our houses, you will be able to support our plans and enable the provision of much needed homes to the area, contributing positively to the
30
council's
seconds.
housing land supply shortfall and local housing needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Shepherd. I'll now open it to councillors' questions of the officers. Any member? Councillor Wheeler, Councillor Andrews. Thanks.
Yes, I did ask the question on planning view. Not sure I got 100% confirmation. The footpaths, or not so much footpaths, the pavements, some of the drawings seem to show pavements around the centre block and some don't show any pavements at all. Can we confirm for the records whether there are pavements, at least on one side of the road? Because it's something I do feel very strongly about.
We did check after planning view. The main circular estate road is sort of a herring brick surface, and there is a side dedicated area for a footpath. There could very well be a curb line in that, but obviously the detail of the road design will go through the Section 38 process. And as you come into the site, that grey area is tarmac, and then the surface material changes to the brick surfacing material. But the road width is ample for a pedestrian section to it, and I'm certain that would be obvious to any pedestrian using the site.
Just quickly, based on that, you're saying that it's brick. Will it be to highway standard?
It is the internal estate road is designed to be of adoptable standard. Yes.
Councillor Andrews?
Yeah, I was going to ask this prior to having it pointed out that there are nesting boxes. Are we talking Swift bricks here, or are they going to be stuck in the trees? Or no?
I believe it's tree bird and bat boxes. Swift. I know what you mean. The Swift terrace boxes. That's not been mentioned. That's not within the enhancement proposals. Bird and bat boxes, hedgehog tunnels, and homes.
Any other member question? No? In which case we'll go into debate. Any member? Councillor Wheeler.
Yes, ought to say something. We've had such a long report, we ought to sort of honour it. Yes, I think this is quite a nice, very nice development. It ticks a lot of the boxes that this council has asked for in the under the green umbrella, so to speak. It is relatively low density compared, well, roughly similar to the neighbourhood. So, you know, I think this has got everything going for it, and I can see absolutely no reason to reject it.
Thank you for that. Councillor Andrews?
I'm very much in agreement with Councillor Wheeler here. Particularly pleased that, and I would expect nothing less from a field site. We are getting 40% social and affordable housing out of this. I can't see it causing any problems in terms of parking, given the way it's designed. I do wonder what developers have got against Swift boxes, to be honest, because I think that's probably better than nailing something to a tree, because the birds will be using the trees anyway, especially in terms of net gain, as it were. But this is about as good a plan as you could get on this plot, I think. I would certainly be supporting it.
Thank you very much indeed. Any other member want to comment? No? Well, in that case, I'll know, Lucy, if you want to come back on anything there. We'll go to the vote. All those in favour, please show. All against, show. So we have a unanimous vote, 10 for, none against, no abstentions. Thank you. That's approved. Now we will be moving on to the print box works. Sorry for my premature. So wait for the officer to get into situation. Sorry. Okay, so I'd like to ask the Senior Planning Officer, Ben, to introduce the case for us, please.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to Primbox Works, a commercial site located within the Tivoli area of Cheltenham. The applicant proposes the redevelopment of the site to provide 6 new dwellings following the demolition of the existing building. The application is at Planning Committee at the request of Councillor Schellin due to the level of local interest and concerns regarding parking and design. The application site relates to an existing commercial site known as Primbox Works, which currently accommodates 10 commercial units, although not all occupied at present. The existing vehicular access and parking to the site is via Lippiott Street, but the site is bound by the highways of Sadler's Lane and Tivoli Walk on 2 other sides. The site is within Cheltenham's principal urban area and is previously developed land. It's also located within Cheltenham's Central Conservation Area and within the Tivoli Character Area. And while some smaller commercial uses exist in the immediate locality, the predominant use is residential. So we've got the site location plan and an aerial view there. And then some site photos. So the existing buildings on the site are largely 2 stories with pitched roofs, although one central section is 2 stories with a flat roof, and a single-storey pitched roof element is located on the Lippiott Street elevation. The facing materials are rendered with metal roof coverings and white UPVC windows. The photos you've got there are the views of the site from Lippiott Street. Photos here are from Tivoli Walk. Picture on the top right shows the Sadler's Lane Road on the other side of the site. And these photos are photos within Sadler's Lane. So as already mentioned, this is a redevelopment of the site for 6 dwellings following demolition of the existing buildings, which includes 2-bed, 3-bed and 4-bed properties, all of which meet and exceed the national space standards. Each property has off-road parking for 2 cars, dedicated bin and bike storage areas, and some form of private external amenity space. Some small areas of landscaping are proposed to be introduced along the western side of the development, and the existing tree in the northwest corner of the site is to be retained. So here you've got the site layout plan and ground floor layout plan, and the first floor plan as well. So 3 properties would have their vehicle access and parking from Lippiott Street, and the other 3 on the right-hand side would be via Sadler's Lane. The roof plan, so this is the top floor of accommodation, which is significantly smaller in footprint than the lower floors and set in from the site boundaries. In terms of sustainability measures, the development includes green roofs, the inclusion of solar panels and air source heat pumps. So we've got the elevations here. So the proposed design and form is clearly contemporary with a flat roof form. The proposed facing materials include buff-coloured brick for the ground and first floors with a bronze-coloured standing seam metal cladding for the top floor. Again, just elevations, but from the other side. I've got a couple of CGI images here. So this first one is for the view from Lippiott Street. And then another with the view from on the corner of Lippiott Street and Tivoli Walk. So the key planning matters for this application are the loss of employment land, principle of development, site layout, scale and design, impact on heritage assets, impact on neighbouring amenity, flooding and drainage, parking and highway safety, climate change and sustainability, contaminated land, impact on trees, impact on the Beechwood SAC, and biodiversity net gain and ecology. So just a summary of the officer recommendation. So the council cannot currently demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. As such, there is a presumption in favour of development. The main benefits of the scheme are the contribution of the 6 dwellings to Cheltenham's housing stock and the redevelopment of the site, removing the existing poor quality buildings. The site layout, scale, form and design of development has been considered to be acceptable, and the application is also acceptable in terms of impact on neighbouring amenity, impact on heritage assets, BNG, ecology, impact on trees, drainage, access and highway safety. Harm to the conservation area has not been identified, and therefore a strong reason for refusal has not been identified, meaning the proposal complies with paragraph 11DI of the MPPF, and any adverse impact of the proposed scheme would not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits, and therefore complies with paragraph 11D2. As such, the tilting balance in favour of development is applied. Given the above, the officer recommendation is to permit the application subject to conditions and section 106 to secure the SAC mitigation contribution. There are a number of conditions. I won't talk about all of them. They're all set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you for that. So we have 3 speakers. I don't know if you've taken note of the discussion before, but you have 5 minutes each, and I will remind you 30 seconds before the end of your 4 minutes that you are coming to the end. So the first speaker I have is Robert Maitland, who's an objector. So if you come forward and whenever you're ready, please start.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of Cheltenham Civic Society, but I live in Tivoli and I know this site well. Thank you again for allowing me to speak about the proposal. The Civic Society supports the principle of new residential development on this site. The existing buildings are unattractive, so redevelopment of the site is an opportunity to provide more and better housing. Section 72 of the Planning Listed Buildings and Conservation Areas Act 1990 creates a duty to pay special attention to the desirability of preserving or enhancing the character or appearance of the area. We object to this proposal because it doesn't do that. On the contrary, it wastes an opportunity to make the area more attractive. The applicant claims that the scheme shows particular sensitivity to the Tivoli character area, but in fact the design completely fails to match the vernacular of the area. Let me explain. The area is quite distinctive, as the council's own character assessment explains clearly. Looking at the existing early and mid-Victorian terraces in the area, 3 features stand out. First, scale. Second, treatment of the street frontage. And third, style, proportions and materials. In terms of scale, while the surrounding streets in Tivoli are 2-storey artisan terraces with pitched roofs, this proposal is for a 3-storey development with a flat roof, although the CGI images are designed to make the 3rd storey almost disappear. In terms of the street frontage, the existing houses have small front gardens with railings to the pavement, but they've got generous back gardens with plenty of amenity space. None of them have on-site parking or use pavement crossovers or have roof terraces. The proposed houses have on-site parking spaces which require pavement crossovers, thus privatising some of the on-street parking that other people use. The large parking bays create gaping, empty spaces opening directly onto the pavement, completely out of character and potentially messy and unsettling. The outdoor amenity space provided is minimal and mean, and in trying to create a bit more, the proposal includes first-floor terraces. Not only are they completely out of character, but they also face directly to the bedrooms of houses across the street, causing intrusive overlooking and noise nuisance that a windowed bedroom would not. And as to style, the existing terraces look attractive and coherent through the consistent use of proportions and materials, but the proposal ignores these essential features of the Tivoli area. Instead of stucco, we have buff-coloured brick with vertical timber cladding. Instead of painted front doors, we have natural timber front doors and garage doors. In addition, there are timber louvre panels and balustrades, along with bronze cladding. These currently and temporarily fashionable materials will create a busy mishmash that will be wholly out of place in the terraces of Tivoli. Good contemporary design responds to its context and improves the area. We can see that in the late 20th century development of Tivoli Mews. It respects the local vernacular, sits comfortably alongside existing buildings and has worn well. The Primbok Works is an interesting site. It offers a unique opportunity to improve the coherence of the area, yet the applicant seems determined to create something that sticks out rather than fits in. The design is inappropriate and incongruous. It bears no relationship to Tivoli. It could be absolutely anywhere, and so it should be resisted. The multiple local objections, so those who know and care for the area and would have to live with the scheme don't like it. It won't age or weather well and will never sit comfortably with its older surroundings. In years to come, people walking through Tivoli will look at it and say, "Who on earth allowed this?" We can do so much better. A contemporary development with a similar number of units that responds to Tivoli's vernacular, that fits comfortably into the area, that takes its cues from the surrounding materials,
You have 30
proportions and scale, and respects Tivoli's character. That would truly enhance the conservation area. We urge you to refuse this application and request a better proposal that adds to the quality of Tivoli. Once again, thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much indeed. And now can I ask Becky Brown, as the applicant's representative, to speak? Whenever you're ready.
Good evening, Chair and members. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening on behalf of the applicant. I don't need to take up too much of your time, as your officer's report is very comprehensive and clearly sets out all the issues. However, right from the beginning, it was clear to us that the main considerations for this redevelopment scheme would be the impact on the conservation area, the impact on the amenity of neighbouring residents, the tree, and also parking. Cheltenham-based architects Coombs Everett have quite rightly spent a considerable amount of time designing and refining this scheme, and we're really pleased to see that officers have concluded it would result in a significant betterment to the site and its surroundings, and would not preserve, but in fact enhance this part of the conservation area. The site is, of course, in a tightly knit, built-up area with existing residential properties on all four sides. Officers have explained in detail in their report how the proposal is compliant with your policies with regards to neighbouring amenity, especially bearing in mind what's on site at present and what already has permission. We were also keen to ensure retention of the tree, especially as this is the only tree within the public realm in this specific part of Tivoli. The applicant has therefore taken advice from a local arboriculturalist, and your trees officer is satisfied with what's proposed. With regards to parking, I thought it would be helpful to explain the engagement the applicant has had with both ward councillors prior to the submission of the application. The first meeting took place in February. At the same time, the permitted development prior approval application was being determined. The applicant's wish to redevelop the site was discussed, and it was agreed that any scheme would consider a comprehensive strategy for the adjoining streets to try to address ongoing residents' concerns with indiscriminate parking resulting in narrowing of carriageways. Following this meeting, local transport consultants rapport were engaged by the applicant. At the following meeting in July, rapport's recommendation to introduce a traffic regulation order, or TRO, to improve access for emergency and refuse vehicles was explained to both councillors Chelin and Barrell. Excuse me. This meant implementing double yellow lines along the southern side of Tivoli Walk. A total of 10 on-street spaces would be lost as a result of the proposed development. The application was then submitted in mid-August, but prior to this, a letter was delivered to over 50 local residents and emailed to both councillors explaining the proposed TRO. However, it soon became clear within the first few weeks of the application that the majority of the residents responding to the council's consultation were not happy about the loss of on-street parking. So following discussions with both planning and highway officers, it was agreed to remove the TRO element of the scheme. By doing this, only 3 on-street spaces are to be lost, and all 6 proposed dwellings will have 2 off-road spaces each, as well as secure cycle storage. Unfortunately, the applicant isn't in a position to solve the residents' existing parking frustrations in Tivoli, but we do feel the proposal reaches a satisfactory compromise solution, whilst enabling the provision of 6 much-needed homes in this highly sustainable location. I therefore urge you to follow your officer's recommendation and grant planning permission subject to the suggested conditions. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much for that. And now can I call on Councillor Chelin to speak? The 5-minute rule applies to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Really just wanted to give some context to this and very interesting to hear what's already been said, which, I hope I don't repeat things. I called this into the committee owing to the level of disquiet with the plans, which centred largely around the design of the buildings and the implications for parking, plus concerns about the impact of the building work itself, as well as links to the drainage infrastructure. And on those latter points, I note that the Planning Officer's report is heavily conditioned, which is welcome in those respects. As was said, the developer reached out early on to Councillor Dilys Barrell and myself to understand the context of the area. And as has been said, they also wrote to the residents when the rapport did the parking consultation report. Dilys and I also sent a letter to residents to ensure they had seen the plans, and many of them came to one of our monthly drop-ins just around the corner from the site, which happened to be timely. This was the most well-attended drop-in event we've had. Dilys and I had mentioned to the developer the likely issues with parking and the issue of egress from Sadler's Lane because of cars parking too close to the corners of Tivoli Walk. It was interesting to see the outcomes of the review that was commissioned, which included the proposal to introduce the extra double yellow lines, but this is one of the elements that's been changed following feedback from the objectors in order to reduce, although clearly not eliminate fully, the concerns about parking. Having followed up with the traffic engineers at GCC, I understand that a permit scheme, which has been suggested by some people, will not solve the parking difficulties in Tivoli, as the issue is with the number of cars owned by the residents and indeed could potentially make things worse. This still leaves considerable concern about the design of the new buildings, which our expert objector has outlined in more detail. So suffice it to say, as with many others in the area, I have always felt the Prinbox works were out of place, if not ugly, whilst appreciating that aesthetics are very personal. It's true to say that elements of the design have been amended to deal with concerns about privacy and light, but the fact remains that many people, including an architect who lives just down the street there, see it as a missed opportunity to meld a more sympathetic contemporary design into the existing Victorian street scene. Anyhow, enough from me, and I understand I need to step out at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, if you would take your leave, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, so now we come to members' questions. Any questions? Councillor Dobie?
Yeah, first of all, can I say that I know the area very well. My mother lived at 15 Lippiatt Street for many years, and indeed I lodged with her after university, so I do know this Primworks site and indeed the local houses quite well. So we've heard from the Civic Society expert objector against. I just wondered if there were any comments from other professionals, such as we've heard about one architect, but is there such a thing as an architects panel? Because I'd heard a rumour that the architects panel had some comments. Would you like to say a few words about that?
Yes, so the architects panel have reviewed and commented. It is included in the officer report, and they are supportive of the design approach and the scheme. They do question the scale of development and whether it's potentially overdevelopment of the site, but in terms of the overall design and appearance, they are supportive of it.
Councillor Foster?
Can I just clarify about the roof terraces? Because when we had the site view, I thought that there wasn't going to be access to the roof, that it was going to be a green roof, but because terrace kind of implies that people can sit out on it and look down. I just wanted to clarify.
Yep, so as originally proposed, there were outdoor terraces that served the third floor of accommodation to the smaller areas. So they essentially were spaces on top of the flat roof. Officers didn't feel that was appropriate in this context, and they have been removed. However, there still are external terraces, but in a different format. They're within the first floor elements of the building, not fully enclosed, but are open roof with open sides, more akin to kind of a balcony, as it were, rather than what you may be describing as a terrace. But there are no terraces, external areas on the flat roof areas on the top of the development.
Councillor Steinhardt?
So further to that, one of the objectors was saying that the first floor terrace might be overlooking other residences. Can you confirm or deny that that's happening? Thanks.
So the context of this site is quite different from many others. So any opening on the external boundaries, including terraces, are on the roadside. So they overlook the road, and yes, they will align with the front elevation of terraces, you know, all around it. But that is an existing situation and pretty much the context that it already exists for development in this type of context where terraces are either side of the road. So it is accepted that, yes, there will be an element in overlooking, but that's no different to existing situation.
Councillor Bamford?
Yeah, just in terms of a question, the timber cladding, I think I've missed something here. Could you explain where timber cladding is in place and why that was chosen? Because that does feel very out of context with Tivoli. Thanks.
So timber cladding is only proposed in the kind of recessed areas of the Undercroft parking. So it's not on the external elevation in any way, but it will be visible in the street scene. So where the Undercroft parking is, which is open, there's no garage doors, the timber cladding is in the recessed areas of that. So yes, it will be visible, but I wouldn't say it makes up the actual design approach for this development. Why it's been proposed is not anything I can answer because I didn't design the scheme. So there you go.
Okay, is that all the questions? Should we go into debate? Councillor Wheeler?
Yes, thank you. Well, one of the things I loved about Cheltenham when I first came here many years ago was the way we look after our architecture. And I very much appreciate what the gentleman from the Civic Society says. However, things have changed. When Tivoli and many other areas of Cheltenham were built, people didn't have cars. People heated their homes using coal in open fires, and windows were kept relatively small because there were major heat loss. I believe that these properties, they've provided, I believe I'm right, 2 parking spaces per unit, which personally I think will improve the parking system, the parking arrangements around there, certainly not make it worse. And yes, if you're going to have Undercroft Park, I don't know if you class that as Undercroft, but if you're going to have parking within the property, there's got to be an opening for it. So these houses could not possibly look like the design of properties built in Tivoli, in this area, or I'm thinking Bath Road, Tivoli, a number of other areas of Cheltenham that have this style of building. Things have to change, things have to move on, and we can't have a rubber stamp of older buildings. All we can do is make modern buildings that fit in nicely. And if I look at the artist's impression there, yes, the windows are bigger because we can put in bigger windows, get more light in, and not have to worry so much about the heating. The height looks very fairly similar. Yes, you've got the 3rd story, and whether this drawing is sufficiently accurate to show the fact that it's quite minimal to look at. But Yeah, I think it's quite cleverly put together. There's quite a lot of reasonable accommodation. We've seen other plans for similar sorts of sites that I've not been happy with, that haven't worked, have been very cramped. I think this is quite a sensitive, well-built design, and I'm more than happy to go along with it.
Councillor Dobie?
So, as we've heard, opposite this space, further up Lippiatt Street, a modern pastiche of the genuine and authentic local mid-Victorian houses, which, as I indicated before, I know very well, was built a few years ago. And the Civic Society evidently prefers this style, but I happen to agree with the professional architects that a sympathetic modern style, clearly modern style, is better than pastiche. It's a matter of opinion, but I think a lot of architects would agree with me rather than with the Civic Society on this, so I will be voting for it.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other member? Councillor Andrew?
Right. I feel I have to say something about this, with it sitting in my county division. There are elements of this I'm really quite pleased about. I'm glad that the tree is going to be made more prominent on this corner by this design. I'd hope to get more trees in that area as well, to be honest. The fact that it's got 2 spaces in each property is fairly neutral in terms of parking, which is very important in this particular area here. The loss of 3 spaces isn't great. It's certainly better than 10, I can tell you that. Especially in an area like this, which is so tightly terraced that permit parking is, I've been told by my traffic engineer, is basically impossible. So on balance, I'm in favour of this. I think given the limitations of that space, this isn't a bad design at all. And as for the balcony, sitting on the first floor, facing the road, that isn't an issue. That's no different to 2 bedroom windows looking across the road at each other. So I will be supporting it. It's certainly an improvement on the print box works itself, especially when you consider things like the iron railings at the front. On balance, I'll be supporting it.
Thank you for that. Councillor Bamford?
Yeah, just very briefly, for me, the scale of this proposal, I'm slightly surprised to hear criticism of that. It feels to me the scale is utterly appropriate. The rest, I agree with Councillor Dobie. We're talking deeply subjective judgments. I personally I'm not mad about the design, but I think one of the problems is trying to solve the parking issue, which I think is probably sensibly dealt with these 2 spaces for each property. And that does have a significant impact on the design, unfortunately. But given what I know about the parking issues in Tivoli, I think that's probably the best compromise you're going to get. So I will be voting in favour. Thanks.
Thank you. There's no other member indicating? Do you need to come back, Ben, and anything there? No. Okay, and if you're happy to go to the vote, we'll take that. Please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And everybody has voted and unanimously for the application, so that is approved. Thank you all very much indeed. I hope you've noted the details on the updates on item 7. I don't think she was going to come back in, was she?
Well, she left all her stuff here. So
oh, right.
unless she's spending the night.
So, item 7 is the updates. Can I just say before we close the meeting that I wish you all a very happy Christmas. Thank you all for your attendance over the year. It's been an up and down year. We've had some interesting meetings, and hopefully it will close on a quiet note tonight. I'd like to thank very much the officers for all the hard work that they've put in to all the applications over the year, and it's much appreciated by the members and by the public, I'm sure, as well. So thank you all very much for everybody involved. And I wish you all a happy Christmas, and I hope you have a prosperous new year in the future. Thank you very much indeed. I close the meeting.